Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Poezyn, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. Welcome to this episode of Underdog Rising. Today we are joined by Leo Harrison, the CEO and founder of Chapter 2, a leading agency that builds scalable talent ecosystems for businesses. Leo is a trailblazer in helping companies attract top talent with data-driven strategies and innovative employer branding. With years of experience transforming recruitment, he brings a unique perspective on the future of talent and leadership. Leo, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Wade. Great to be here.
If you can take just a little bit of time just to walk us through a summary of your career so that the listeners today can better understand the journey that you've taken from where you started to where you are today with Chapter 2.
Cool, I can do that. So going way back to my very first job, my role, I've spent my whole career really in providing in-house services for global brands and global businesses. So my first job was, and this is before social media content, I'm going to show my age here, we were in reprographics rooms in large companies' head offices. And I was a customer service executive or account manager for a reprographics business called Xerox. And we had the BT account and we were in-house doing their reprographics. I started out there and it was my first real role, understanding business, if you like. I was 19 though, I didn't really know anything. And I didn't do university. I went straight into work, and I first really cut my teeth on customer centricity at Xerox because my role was to serve the in-house marketing people at British Telecom to get their marketing materials printed and produced, and then quite quickly I started to create additional revenue streams for the reprographics center around design, other print services, events, and all that sort of stuff, and it became a bit of a revenue stream for that account within Xerox. I was then sort of 19, 20, put on what they called the Pace Setters Club. So young executives doing well or spotted with other sort of cohorts as people that could go far in the business. And I was mentored by a few people and I was on this sort of what they called the Pace Setters Club. However, in when was this? God, that was in 2000, and then, by 2004, I met with a chap called Simon Martin, who I knew through my network. Simon is the founder and CEO of a company called Oliver that built in-house creative agencies for global brands. And at the time, again, I was in my early 20s, I was 21, 22, and I met this guy called Simon, and he said, you build in-house reprographics teams. I'm looking to build a business that does in-house creative services. The whole world is moving more digital, more creative, at a faster pace. I think there's a real model here. So I'm going to set up a business. I've just won our first client. Would you come and be a client account manager? Now, I was on a fast track to a good career with a big corporate. And I'm talking to this guy that I've just met who hasn't really got a business. It's just one guy and one client. And I remember being at home with my dad, talking to my dad, going, oh my God, do I jack this in, this great corporate career I'm potentially going to have for this guy who kind of literally has just got a business and an idea? And my dad's response was, you're 21 years old. You just turned 22. You're going to find out if this guy, Simon Martin, is a good businessman or a bad businessman within the first 6 months. You're going to find out. You'll only still be 21 and a half, 22. You'll still be a very young executive. You've got time on your hands. You don't quite realize how much time you have when you're that age. You think you need to make a success now. You've got so much time at 21, 22. It's ridiculous. So my dad said, figure out this guy, Simon. He seems like a good guy. If he's a good guy, you made the right decision. If he's a bad guy, you'll get back. They'll take you back at Xerox. Anyway, Simon Martin turned out to be the best business brain I've ever worked with in my career. And we and he trailblazed the creative industry by building the very first of its kind in-house creative agency. And I was effectively his right-hand man for 15 years. So he would win a client. I'd go in and build and deliver it. He'd open up in a country. I'd go and look after and incubate that country into our ecosystem. He'd buy a business. I'd bring them in. And that was a 15-year journey that we had. And we basically took that business from 4 people to 3,000 people in 40 countries around the world.
Wow. That is exceptional. So based off of that, you had a lot of career transitions, but very profound ones, right? And then what inspired you to make that leap from the senior role and leader at Oliver Agency to eventually founding your own company, right? Chapter two.
That's a really good question, because I had every reason to stay at Oliver. I was potentially succession planned for a very senior role, maybe a future CEO at one point. I don't know if I was capable of doing it. And I had it all, really. I knew everybody in the business. And Oliver was acquired by a large US brand technology business. And um, it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to the business. And the business was going to go on to grow even further. And I had a decision at that point. Do I stay at Oliver? And the business was going to definitely become more corporate because of the size of it, and because it needed to become less sort of fly by the seat of your pants, because it was a seriously big business by that point, 3,000 people. And corporate governance was coming in, proper organogram structures were coming in, and I could kind of see myself becoming very thinly stretched across a number of jurisdictions. And I thought, if I was going to do something different, now is the time to do it. Now is the time to sort of hand over the baton. We've just been acquired to a new guard that come in, and go and do something else. Don't do something different. So I decided, if I'm going to do it, now is the time to do it. And this was in 2019. So I sat down and told Simon that I want to go do something else, which was a very, very difficult decision, because I was, and very hard conversation, because I've worked with this guy. He's my brother, my best friend, and my mentor for 15 years, and I'm breaking up with him. It's like, I was nervous. I was so nervous. I remember when I was at dinner with him, I told him I was really, really nervous. And I wanted to go and address a problem that we felt as a business ourselves. So most companies, most really great businesses and products are built out of somebody else's pain that they're creating. There's a solution to that problem. And Oliver's biggest challenge was scaling at pace, cost efficiently. We spent a lot of money with recruitment businesses. We were scaling in countries that were anywhere close to our hometowns. So one minute, we've got a head office in the UK, but we need to open in Jakarta, in Singapore, in Shanghai, in Sao Paulo. We were scaling so fast. So it was a really difficult exam question. We leaned into a lot of recruitment companies, but that cost us an absolute fortune. So I want to develop a product that solved that problem, because it solves the challenge of helping companies scale at pace cost efficiently. So I presented that to Simon, told Simon this is what I want to go and do. It's kind of taking the sort of Oliver ethos and DNA, effectively, of delivering and servicing in-house creatives and moving it into a different vertical for in-house talent acquisition. So I wanted to basically use what I'd learned over 15 years and take it into a different sector and see if I could solve that problem. And it's worked. The other reason why I really decided to take the leap was I had been Simon's sort of right-hand man for 15 years, and I'd done many different roles in the business, and I felt like I was really well trained and well equipped to do this. I felt that I had the training, I felt I had the commercial acumen, I felt I had the right time on my side, it was the right time in my life, and that's a really important point to raise. If you're going to do this, you have to pick time in your life to go and do it. And it was a good time for me to take a risk. So, yeah, there are two reasons why I think it was a good timing for me to take a risk, and it was the right time for me to step out. And two, I felt I had a product that other people would buy.
Simon, when you had that initial conversation with him, was he supportive in your transition into starting chapter two?
Massively. Yeah, he always had supportive. In fact, so much so, the sort of origin stories to chapter two was I actually set chapter two up. I thought it was the perfect time, but it was the worst time in the world to set your own business, because I did it 2 weeks before COVID landed in. And setting up a recruitment company, then like you would hire anyone. So it was the worst time ever. And I do remember Simon literally, helping me through and talking me through some of the tough times. And I know that if there was one particular moment, and again, I'll never forget the conversation, was when I was going to quit chapter two and go and ask for my old job back. And I know that Simon could have and would have given me my old job back, or a job back in his world, but he purposefully never offered it to me, because I think he thought I would make it and get through it, which we did. And one of the other things that we said was, this will be one of the things we laugh about and think, do you remember when type conversations? And I didn't see it at the time, but Simon could see it and he encouraged me and pushed me on.
Yeah, I think it's always fascinating to see, right? I think at those moments and those fork in the road um, times, we often will think that our mentors will be hesitant to let us go, right? And to step out and try our own things. But more so than not, they're actually extremely supportive. So that must have been a very interesting time, right? At that dinner table and having that conversation when we're so fearful in order to have that conversation to say, now is my time, right? I have to say goodbye and let go, but we always think that they might be a little bit hesitant, but they're always very supportive and they kind of want to help people grow and actually step out into the world. And then at chapter 2, right, you guys focus on creating strong talent ecosystems for companies. On the flip side of that, how can young professionals better position themselves as valuable additions to a company's talent pipeline?
Recruitment is on both ends, from the business's perspective and from the candidate's perspective, it's a sales and marketing strategy. I think it's on the business to take its product, i.e. the employer brand, to market to be as attractive as possible to the best talent on the marketplace. That's really, really key. But from a graduate's perspective, who might not have the case studies, examples, what they've done in the past, is upon that candidate to portray themselves as the most viable candidate. So I think both parties need to sell to each other, and I think that if both parties, especially the candidates, come to the party with the attitude, I really want this job, and they show hunger, they show keen, they show interest, they're going to stand out from the people who are quite passive. And I've always, so that I've hired, I'll give you a classic example. I hired a guy, and to be fair, he's now gone off and set up his own business, and he came into our business. We supported him. He was great. I gave him a job, and then now he's gone off to do his own business. And I'll shout him out. His name is George Nagy. So George was ex-student, film graduate, and he sent me a video of why I should hire him, and I've still got it today. It's the best application I've ever received. And he said, "This is why you should hire me." And he did this full 90-second or 1 minute video on why I should hire him, from a personal perspective, from a professional perspective. And it wasn't just, "Hi, I'm George. I'm amazing. This is what I've done." This is like, I got to know George. And this happened 2 years ago, by the way, and I'm still talking about this now, right? And literally within 24 to 48 hours, I offered George a job. And he came in, he worked as part of our business, and he did a brilliant and amazing job. And then George came to my office one day and we actually went running together. And he said, "What tips would you give me to want to do my own thing?" And I said, "Well, the best thing I can do is push you on to your next thing, whether that's in chapter 2 or not. I want you to benefit from it." So he's now gone on to create his own agency and is doing his own thing in his own sector. So that's a brilliant example of someone who was really hungry, really tenacious, high quality individual who articulated themselves, aligned to me, researched me and hit all my notes, and got a job offer within 48 hours. And then within 2 years, he's now got his own agency and doing his own thing.
That's an incredible story. I really appreciate you sharing that because it just shows that extra initiative, right? In different elements of how to stand out, right? Amongst the sea of candidates that are all applying for roles, right? In this day and age, you see that there's folks that set up AI bots to go out and immediately apply for roles as soon as they're posted on platforms such as LinkedIn. But how can you take that time to really stand out? Invest not only in yourself, but the organization. And I think that also shows from the company's perspective that that person is truly invested in that role and they would really, really love to be with that organization. And to your point around the sales and marketing, I think it's very instrumental that both parties do that because then it shows that they're both willing to come to the plate, right? And equally share. So you touched on employer branding. And I know, chapter 2 emphasizes that and focuses on it as well. But what can college students do to build a personal brand that sort of mirrors the qualities companies look for in top talent?
Authenticity is the number one priority for me. When we talk about mirroring yourself to another business, as you should do that as long as it's natural. The most important thing I would say in any career, applying for a job and getting a job, in my opinion, is the equivalent to like a lifetime purchase, buying a car, buying a house. You only want to ever do it every 3 to 5 years, right? That's really ideally. You don't want to be jumping around. So you've got to do your research. And as a candidate, I would firstly find out what are the sectors, what are the brands, what are the industries that really resonate with me? What are my personal values? So first understand what your personal values are. What are your personal values? Because some people don't even know what they are or haven't really explored them before. So really like, do a bit of sort of self-research, understand what are your personal values. Then look at the type of companies that have the same personal values, because when you get those two together, they're going to sell themselves, because everything you say is going to really resonate with the person you're talking about, or talking to, and the business you're talking to. Once you've found, and I'm talking to the candidates now, once you've found those businesses, research them. One of the things I would, the phrase I would use is, and we do this with clients, but I think candidates should do this with jobs. And I use the word pursue them. Treat it as a pursuit, right? You want to go after that one. Okay, right. So you want to go after a certain industry, whether it be retail, FMCG, e-com. Do your research on those businesses. Do a research on their competition. Do a research on their products. Do a research on their culture, their values. Talk about how your values align to their values. Really show interest in them and knowledge about them in a way that is really authentic, And then once you have done that research, I would then look to engage with any events they might have, try and attend any events that they'll be hosting, because there will be graduate fairs that they can go to. Attend those. I would personally write to any hiring managers. So it's very easy to find out the hiring managers who's hiring on LinkedIn research or on the ATS, the applicant tracking system that they might be applying to. And there's no harm in applying to a role via the applicant tracking system, then writing directly to the person on LinkedIn and telling them, I've just applied for this role. The reason why I think I'm really great for it is A, B, C, and D. Really succinct, really clear. And then what that's going to do is that's going to then put them to the top of the pile or the top of front of mind when they're looking through the thousands of applicants they've had. I'll spot that person. I've seen that name before. So it's all about being front of mind, all about selling yourself.
Yeah, that's a very unique perspective, selling oneself, because so many times when folks go to look for a career or apply to a role, they're thinking of themselves, right? They're not necessarily putting themselves out there and thinking of what the organization might need and taking that time to invest in them. You mentioned applicant tracking systems. Would you mind just taking a little brief minute for the listeners today, just explain what that is so listeners can understand?
Yeah, so an applicant tracking system is effectively a piece of technology that tracks applicants from application of the job. So the job ad will be on the front end of the applicant tracking system, and they might see it on LinkedIn, they might see it on a career site. So if you log into a company, look at their career site, there'll be a job advertised. If you click that job, you'll probably be in what we'll call the top of funnel of an applicant tracking system. What you'll then do is you'll then populate it, you'll fill it in, and then you'll be dropped into a recruitment funnel, which is the applicant tracking system, and you'll be in somebody's inbox. That job will then be tagged to a talent partner or somebody who's going to screen all the people that have applied, and the applicant tracking system tracks all of the candidates from application all the way through to final offer. And the thing I really love about these technology platforms is, because we are recruiting at such pace and at such large volumes, these systems allow us to make sure candidates are always responded to and are always put through a process that is the same, no matter who they are. I think it's leveling the playing field a little bit from a candidate perspective, but also making sure that if you are not successful, the applicant tracking system makes sure you get a response to say, really sorry on this occasion you've not been responded, but then the applicant tracking system can say, but you were really good, we'll put you in for the next role, and you automatically get put through for the next role that comes in. So they're really good technology products. There's a number of them out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's great because so often, folks will complain about, getting sort of that automated response, but then there's the other side of that coin, right? Where in the past they wouldn't even get a response, and then folks would complain about that. So I think the systems are improving over time, but so often we look at platforms such as LinkedIn, right? And we focused on elements of personal branding, setting yourself apart, staying engaged with folks that you're, with hiring managers that you want to apply to those companies that they work for. And oftentimes that involves like storytelling, right? And you've spoken about storytelling as well on like LinkedIn, sort of to get, engage candidates. Like, how can young professionals tell their own story to stand out in sort of applications and interviews?
Storytelling is and will be for the foreseeable the number one way to get anybody to engage with you as an individual, and that story has to be authentic and resonate. Now, it's really difficult from an application perspective to do that because, generally speaking, it's upload your CV here and fill out this form. But where storytelling really comes in, I think, is when you start to personally interact. So let's go past the application stage. You're in screening and you're talking to somebody and you're in a process. I think when you start to tell a story about, why you feel you're right for this job, the background of you as a human being, who you are, how you are right for this role, your values and how they align to the company's values, those stories are going to resonate more with the person you're talking about because they live those values as well, because they work for that business, and they're going to, ideally, put you onto the next stage. It's all about getting to the next stage like a game, right? Treat this like a game, getting to the next level, right? You've got through the first round, you got from screening because you've got a really great looking CV, because you've interacted with the person on LinkedIn maybe, and you've got a really great personal brand on LinkedIn in this early stage. You got through phase one. Okay, phase two is you personally now. You've got to say yourself. Okay, you do that by telling a story. What's your background? What do you believe in? Why do you think you're right? And you've got to really sort of connect with the person in that screening call. Then you get to the next level, and then then it might come to a presentation or something, and then the sort of importance of the quality then increases more, because while you are one of fewer, the stakes are higher.
Relating sort of to that element of it, sort of being a game in a way, do you recommend that folks practice? Obviously, when we're talking to the audience today, right, we've got young professionals, college graduates, newer to the industry, maybe lacking a little bit of confidence. Should they maybe perhaps practice sort of their introductions, right? Maybe doing some studying and giving some candid responses to questions and then seeing how they can improve over time?
Yep, absolutely. One, there's no harm in it, and two, when we are pushed outside our comfort zone, we get nervous, right? So somebody who's never been in an interview before is going to feel nervous. So how do you combat these nerves? You just practice, 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 and get your narrative right. Get your head in a place where the narrative is ready to flow, and you're not searching for stuff. You feel like you come across like what you're saying, you're on point, and it's well versed. I wouldn't say script it, but I would say get a narrative.
I agree. And then also just, trying, I think, weave in where you can align with the organization, right? Once again, you're talking about values, and look at those values on the company's website, et cetera, and then align maybe some of your stories to their ethos, because then you want to make sure that that fit is right, like you were talking about. And I think often at times that takes a different level of emotional intelligence, right? So I wanted to put a question across to you that is, what's the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, right? And how can young professionals start to develop that?
Honestly, I think emotional intelligence has been the only thing that's really got me to where I am today.
Interesting.
I think I'm more emotionally intelligent than I am from academically intelligent, put it that way. Academically, you look at my school grades, I was shocking. But I think emotional intelligence is really, really important, and hypersensitivity to people and how they react to things. I personally sometimes overthink these things, so I look at every nuance, every body language, every eyebrow raise. But I think emotional intelligence is really, really key to be able to read somebody and be able to adapt. One of the biggest things that we have to do in today's world is be able to adapt to different scenarios very, very quickly. And if you get a question from left field that maybe not in your narrative, you've got to be able to adapt to that. So I think emotional intelligence is key to being able to articulate and be attractive as a candidate. I think it's really, really it's fundamental when it comes to managing a team. And I think it sits shoulder to shoulder with sort of IQ. I think it's becoming more important.
Yeah, I think it is, especially this day and age with the ever evolving landscape, right? And things just expanding over time when you look at different races, ethnicities, the way we can connect differently within the world, right? I think even when you were touching on sort of body language and, how to have conversations online, I think with everything being remote as well, and a lot of elements going that way, how does that transfer to even what we're doing right now, right? I mean, we're sitting in different parts of the world. You were talking about eyebrow raises, looking at, do you look at the screen or the camera, et cetera? There's just different elements that come into play that even alter the landscape of the interview process. And that's also something that, college kids have to potentially get used to, because it's less and less becoming about doing it in person. And I think there's a lot of energy exchange when it happens in person, potentially versus remotely, and you've kind of got to navigate those worlds as well.
One of the things I always say is, and I think this is why employer brand is so important and personal brand is so important, because if you are most candidates will change the company they're working for, but not the office they're working in. A lot of people work from home these days, right? How does a business articulate how amazing it is to work for without the ability to get them in for 3 stages, meet the leadership team, meet the other managers, meet their cohorts, see people, shake hands? It's just much harder 2D. So the only way to do it these days is through these things, and that's why, and this is our new medium of connection and communication. So if I'm wanting to put myself out there, it's got to start here, and same with the business.
That's fascinating. I know we've covered this kind of in a few different ways, but just for those who are not on LinkedIn, right? Because I've seen that there are a ton of different college students, specifically less than young professionals, that are actually on LinkedIn. They get a little bit nervous about voicing their perspective, their opinions. They don't know how to go about sharing their expertise on platforms such as LinkedIn, right? Because they feel like people will judge them, et cetera. Do you have any sort of tips or tricks on potentially how they can just get involved, or is it just rip the Band-Aid, start posting, and then see what resonates, and then slowly but surely you'll be able to define your area of expertise?
So there's a number of things there. So I'm going to come to the candidate side, but from the business side, from the brand side, 70% of candidates will look at your company's LinkedIn live section, your career site, before they even think about applying for a job. So you've got 70% of these candidates looking at you before they even apply and deciding whether they want to apply or not. So you've got to be as attractive as possible when it comes to the race for the best candidates. From a candidate perspective, I think that the first thing I do when I'm looking at hiring is I look at the candidate, I go to their LinkedIn profile, and I don't go to their background and history. I don't go to their recommendations. I scroll along, I look at their posts, and I click interactions. What are they interacting with? Because that shows me what they're interested in. So for people who are confident in articulating themselves and posting and go post. It's brilliant, but it's not for everybody. A lot of people don't like putting themselves out there, and that's okay. And I wouldn't encourage anyone to go so far out of their comfort zone that actually has a negative effect on their confidence. What I would say you can do is you can start interacting with stuff. You can start liking, engaging, resharing, reposting, all stuff that puts you sort of behind this curtain of LinkedIn, but shows other people that you're interested in them and this world, and you agree with certain stuff. And then from there, build your confidence. I would say that the LinkedIn platform itself is starting to merge and cross borders with the other social media platforms now. And that's okay, right? People go, LinkedIn business profile. It's not, right? It's just business orientated. And I like the fact that I see people's personal lives, because that's why we're here, for our personal lives, right? We're here to enrich our personal lives, and so I like seeing people's personal lives. I like seeing someone, having time with their children or their pets or whatever. So, I think the two are merging together a bit more. And I think if people want to start to post, you know what, this scrolling thumb is relentless. So it's dead. It's gone. If it's a crap post, don't worry about it, because no one's. One of the things, I don't know if you know Stephen Bartlett. He's one of our investors. He's got a massive profile. He's got a big podcast.
Absolutely.
He says to me, when it comes to posts that nobody hears, it's like a tree falling in the forest. No one hears it, right? So it doesn't really matter. Move on.
I think a lot of folks hold on to that fact very heavily, in the sense of the other side of it. They're going to post and the whole world's going to judge them. And it's like, no, you're okay. You will be fine. You're not, potentially saving lives here by just with your one post. So, but I like that you mentioned take that easy first step. Just start engaging, start interacting. But I think that's a unique play to go and identify and look at the interactions, especially for corporations as well, just to look at that personal side of that individual, right? Where do the interests lie? Going back to data, you mentioned that early on in the episode. So, in an era driven by data and technology, how do you balance the quantifiable aspects of recruitment with the unquantifiable qualities that make a candidate truly exceptional?
It's a really good question. So I've seen recruitment teams hire in high volumes, but not get the candidates right, and their attrition be very, very high. My personal preference is to focus on quality, not quantity. And I like to be benchmarked. And with a number of our clients, we actually look for the alumni of people that we've hired from them and make sure they're still in the business 1, 2, 3 years later, because that means we've hired somebody who has been there, they're right, they've stayed, rather than saying, I've hired 50 people for you in the last 3 months, but only 25 of them have stuck around. That means you're not getting the right people in the door. You're just focusing on the deal. And that's what I think is wrong with traditional recruitment companies these days. They just focus on the deal, getting the bum on the seat, and they don't worry about actually, is this right for the candidate and for the business?
Yeah, that's very interesting because they do, and you find often at times that process moves extremely quickly, but then you ultimately get a higher churn rate because they didn't spend time with that candidate and make sure that both the company and the candidate align for that long-term growth and stability. Sort of just in that same vein, is there a paradox, right, in creating processes to organically attract talent? Like, can something be both organic and process driven? And maybe how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think totally it can. I think the paradox is using a combination of your employer brand to take to market to attract the right talent to your business. Because if you're pushing out content that resonates with people, and what they're seeing, they're aligned to, they like the look of, they can see themselves working there. A lot of the values align. That's highly organic. But then there's got to be a very quantifiable process that says, are you capable of doing the job? There's two things that you really got to look at. Are you compatible and are you capable? Because I've had people that are capable all day long, but they're not compatible and they come in and piss everybody off. Or I've had people who are highly compatible, lovely people, but they're frankly not up to the job. And they're the two things that I think are so important when it comes to assessing the right candidates. Are they compatible, this paradox you're talking about, and are they capable? They're the two things you've got to look for. And I think the employer brand and the content that we create for clients looks at how compatible they are. And then the recruitment process, the questions, the interviews, the presentations say how capable they think they are.
I think that's exceptional. I really appreciate you sharing that and diving into it a little bit because it's important for the younger generation to know. And it's great to get these insights from somebody such as yourself, right, with this experience and you're really invested in it and you believe it. So as we round out here, I just wanted to, give you a chance to sort of speak about and mention, why chapter 2?
Thank you. Well, I think chapter 2 represents an evolution of what's commonly known as recruitment process outsourcing or RPO, and our business model is predicated on the basis that it dedicates recruitment teams to clients 100%. So our teams only think and live one client at a time, one person to one client or 5 people to one client, depending on the size of the team. And we combine our ability to do really amazing talent acquisition with talent practitioners with technology and employer branding, because I believe the two go hand in hand. Attracting the right talent to your business that's going to stay there for a long time, and nurturing that candidate pool yourself, and having amazing people to be able to identify and bring the gold medalists through into your business. And we've seen exponential growth. So we've grown by 248% since we started. We've grown by 70% year on year. And this model is truly unique. And this model is helping our clients attract the best talent and at such a low cost. There's a new way of doing it, and I believe this is the innovation of doing it.
Leo, thank you so much. This has been exceptional, and I'm really excited to see the growth of Chapter Two and the expansion into the U.S. as well. And I just really appreciate you taking your time and sharing that with us, as obviously it's extremely valuable. And I appreciate you giving back to the younger generation so that we can empower them over time.
That's a pleasure. Thank you, Wade.